been released from custody. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and most of all, being known, loved, and protected. There are thousands of kids waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A troubling season for the Clippers continues to generate more misery. They lost to Memphis last night, 121-103. 4 straight loss for the Clippers, who now have lost 8 straight at home. The Clippers haven't won a home game since October 31st against New Orleans. The loss to Memphis drops the Clippers to 6-20. If it wasn't for a 5-22 New Orleans, the Clippers would be at the bottom of the Western Conference. The Lakers are off until Thursday night in Utah at 18-7. The Lakers have the 3rd best record in the West. Luka Doncic still leads the NBA in scoring with 34.7 points per game. The Rams will not have wide receiver Devontae Adams for Thursday night's showdown game at Seattle. Adams suffered a strained hamstring in Sunday's win over Detroit. The Rams are considering resting Adams for the final 3 regular season games to make sure he's healthy for the playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
Happy holidays! This holiday season, KBLA Talk 1580 wishes you and yours joy, peace, and prosperity. As we celebrate with family and friends, we're already looking forward to an exciting first quarter, packed with must-attend events to kick off the new year just right. In January, join us for our inaugural Brotherhood Brunch, bringing together community leaders, change makers, and everyday people for inspiration and connection. February means it's time for our signature Black History Month luncheon, a powerful celebration you won't want to miss. And in March, Women's History Month, we're once again hosting our State of Black Women in Los Angeles Symposium and Luncheon, addressing the issues that matter most inside our community. From all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, happy holidays. Stay tuned for more details on these incredible upcoming events. KBLA Talk 1580, your voice, your community, your power.
I'm Tavis, Smiley. Glad to have you with us in this hour of our program. And as promised, a conversation with Harvard professor of American history, Vincent Brown. We are in a culture war, to be sure, these days. We just spent some time talking the first hour with our guest about the cultural war that we find ourselves in these days. And by the way, let me just mention right quick, if you did not hear this news in the first hour, breaking news, the House Speaker, Mike Johnson, recently announced minutes ago that he will not call a vote to extend enhanced subsidies under the Affordable Care Act, better known as Obamacare, effectively guaranteeing that they will expire at the end of this month. What does that mean? Glad you asked. It means that premiums are about to rise through the roof, yours and mine. Ain't nobody happy about this. And I posed the question in the last hour as to whether or not this is another example of Republicans shooting themselves not just in the foot but in the head, because their base is going to be impacted by this as well. We shall see. But the premiums are about to go through the roof, and it just makes me all the more upset with those Democrat defectors who in the Senate some weeks ago said that they were doing it because they wanted to get a deal to at least have an up or down vote on this very issue. I digress for now. Don't get me started. But Professor Brown is here, so let me push forward to my conversation with him. What does the American Revolution have to say to us about cultural battles? What was life like for black folk before, during, and after America's break from the Brits. I'm delighted to have Professor Brown with us in this hour. How you doing, Doc? Good to have you on the program.
I'm well, Mr. Smiley. Thanks for having me on.
No, please call me Tavis, man. I deeply appreciate your being on the program today. Glad we have an hour to talk to you. He is the Charles Warren Professor of History and Professor of African American Studies at Harvard. Let me start. I'm always fascinated by the backstory. I say that all the time. I'm sure the audience gets tired of hearing me say that, but I say it to guests all the time so they understand why I'm about to ask the question I'm about to ask. And the question I'm about to ask you is how and why an African American ends up spending his life studying the American Revolution. Just give me the backstory for why Vincent Brown has been so wed to studying the American Revolution as a black man.
Oh, well, thank you. That's a good question. And it's not necessarily an easy question, in part because, the American Revolution often stands as an origin story for a certain vision of the American nation that hasn't always included us.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the reasons why it became so interesting to me is I wanted to explore all of those forgotten elements of the American Revolution, all of those stories that weren't in the origin story when I was growing up in the 1970s and 1980s, especially the story of slavery and the story of African Americans in the Age of Revolution. Because it's also the case that the revolutionary ideals espoused in the Declaration of Independence, that all persons, I'm saying persons instead of just men, all persons were created equal and endowed by the Creator with certain inalienable rights, among them the right to the pursuit of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Those things are part of the fundamental creed of the American nation that Black people have always drawn on in order to advance our own progress in a nation state that hasn't always seen our progress as its mission. So I thought the American Revolution would be a good place to start for thinking about how it is that we make the United States accountable to its own creed, which would make it accountable to us as Black people.
Yeah. We're off and running. I love this already. So let me just ask you then, next, what is your critique of that origin story? I got my own, but this conversation is about you. So let me test you first, and then maybe I'll opine on with my own. But what's your read of that origin story? What's your critique of it?
I have a couple.
Yeah.
The first one is I think that the origin story, as that phrase suggests, implies that things start with the American Revolution. That 1776, as a date in itself, can be seen as the starting point of something important. Whereas I see the Revolutionary era growing out of a larger process, an unfolding process that expands far beyond North America and includes far more than those people who create a nation state. So when I think of that Revolutionary era, I think of the British Empire as encompassing not just the 13 colonies in North America that became the United States, the ones we always think of, but the 26 colonies in the Americas, by some counts as many as 40-something, that include those colonies in the Caribbean. And those colonies in the Caribbean in the 18th century were by far the British Empire's most profitable colonies, their most militarily significant colonies, and the ones where the colonists, the wealthy colonists, were the best politically connected, right? And so if you're trying to understand the American Revolution without understanding the heart of the British Empire in the Caribbean, you're not really understanding much at all, in my view. Now, the second important thing about that is those Caribbean colonies were populated by were populated by mostly Black people, 90% of them enslaved. And in some of those islands, some 50 to 75% of them having been born in Africa. Now, when we think of the story of America and we think of immigration, we know a lot about those migrants who came from Europe to North America in the 17th and 18th century. But it turns out that about 3/4 of all the migrants who came to the Americas before 1800 migrated from Africa. And we know far less about those migrants from Africa who made the Americas what they were in the 18th century and to a large extent what they are today. We also think about the history of slavery as being something that's primarily about the history of the United States, when in fact the history of slavery in the Caribbean and the history of slavery in South America, especially Brazil, is very much a part of that American story as well. So situating the American Revolution in that larger story of the Americas and the Atlantic world, in which the story of the slave trade and slavery was fundamental, is part of the way I address that origin story, trying to place it on a bigger canvas so we can understand more about it and think more about the process out of which the American nation emerges in the late 18th, early 19th century.
We're going to spend the rest of the hour talking about that process. Our guest in this hour is Vincent Brown, Harvard professor of American history, as well as African and African American studies. Delighted to have him for the rest of this hour. You're listening to Tavis Smiley.
From Lamert Park with love, this is Tavis Smiley.
Find what you love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine and More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
Make a move into a home of your own. With City National Bank's Ladder Up Home Loan Grant, you could receive up to $20,000 that you never need to pay back. Use it toward your down payment, save on closing costs, or to buy down your mortgage rate. Find out more at cnb.com/ladderuphome. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Property must be in a qualifying market in California, New York, or New Jersey. Additional terms and conditions apply. Not all applicants will qualify. Terms are subject to change without notice. City National Bank is an equal housing lender. Member FDIC. NMLS number 536994.
KBLA Talk 1580 congratulates Malik Books on celebrating 35 years in business.
It's a celebration.
Malik Books proudly houses one of the largest African American and diverse children's books in the nation. This is the perfect time to pick up holiday reads, meaningful gifts, and to support literacy in our community. For 35 years, Malik Books has stood strong in the Black Book Revolution, uplifting stories that heal, inspire, and transform. One reader at a time. Change your thoughts, change your life. Books are the gift that keeps giving. From all of us at KBLA Talk 1580, congratulations to Malik Books on 35 years of culture, pride, and community.
10 athletes will face the toughest job interview in fitness that will push past physical and mental breaking points. You are the fittest of the fit. Only one of you will leave here with an iFit contract for $250,000.
This is when mindset comes in.
Someone will be eliminated.
Pressure is coming down.
This is Trainer Games.
Watch it on Prime Video starting January 8th.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit lifelock.com. Terms apply.
Let's get back to more of this rich dialogue with Tavis Smiley.
Dr. Vincent Brown, professor at Harvard, American history as well as African and African American studies, is our guest in this hour, talking about the American Revolution. I started, in case you've just tuned in, asking why a black man would spend his entire life studying the American Revolution. What's the takeaway from that? So we started there, and I received his answer about that, and now we're pushing forward from there. I asked him what his critique was or is of the origin story, the origin story of this country. He answered that as well. So if you missed any part of the conversation already, it's been a good one coming out the blocks. Check out the podcast of this live conversation posted later tonight if you missed the opening salvo in this particular conversation. That said, speaking of Harvard, I was with our friend and brother yesterday, Dr. Cornel West, who was at one point the youngest, I may still be, the youngest university professor in the history of Harvard, was Dr. West when he received that high honor many years ago. So Doc was here yesterday. We spent the day together yesterday. Once he went off the air, he does our program, Professor Brown, every Monday and Thursday. So he's in town right now. So he and I hung out yesterday. And interestingly, we were talking about this. And by this, I mean America's origin story. And one of Doc's critiques in our conversation, which he has actually espoused and shared on this program, is a critique of Zoran Mondani, who he supported and glad the brother won as mayor in New York City. But Mondami's gotten into a bad habit, as Doc might say, a bad habit, he ain't the only one, of talking about the origin story of America through the eyes of the immigrant, not through the eyes of the black freedom struggle. And that is not the proper starting place. And to the point, when somebody with the microphone, the megaphone, the platform, the bully pulpit that Mondami has, being, heralded and applauded and in some ways even deified by people all across the country, you hear him repeatedly talk about the story of America, the origin story of America, and present it through the eyes of the immigrant. That's not taking us where we need to go. And frankly, it's not factual. That's what Doc had to say literally just yesterday. Your thoughts about that before I push forward?
Okay, that's a fantastic conversation, a difficult one. But first, I want to say, if you see Dr. Cornel West again, please tell him Vincent Brown said hi. I consider him a mentor and a friend, and he's always been an inspiration to me as a scholar who really has a moral compass in this business that is rarer than you might expect. So I greatly admire him. But I want to say there's a way in which you can harmonize those stories, the Black freedom struggle and the story of the immigrant or immigrants, by pushing the story of immigration back further to, as I said, the 17th and 18th century, where you find that, the Black freedom struggle began with immigrants coming over in the course of the transatlantic slave trade, right? So I begin the Black freedom struggle with the story of those people struggling for freedom from slavery. And that began as early as the early 16th century, right? Where you had, for example, a revolt in Santo Domingo and the first Spanish colony in the Americas against slavery and against colonialism right there at its origins. That stretches all the way through those maroon societies, right? And maroons were people who had been enslaved, who escaped, who then often formed communities, sometimes militant communities in the mountains and forests and swamps, and fought campaigns against slavery. Now, some of them formed their own states. So, for example, the state of Palmares in Brazil, that lasted for nearly a century in the 17th century, was formed by Africans and their descendants. So immigrants, very much part of the Black freedom struggle in the Americas, right? We had that going on in the Caribbean and in what became the United States as well. So what I would ask people like Zoran Mamdani to do is extend their understanding of immigration back to the colonial period, right? And that's when I think the story of the immigrant and the story of the Black freedom struggle really begin to converge, and we can play that all the way up on through the present.
Yeah. So I take that. I take your point. I'm still processing it. But let me ask this while I'm processing. What happens then when we have this sort of revisionist history, whether it's Mondami or anybody else, because he ain't the only one guilty of a revisionist sort of history, as you well know. Right now, we don't even want to teach anything about the truth in classrooms, and that's another conversation. But what happens when Black folk in particular are in fact left out of the origin story in this country? What's the price we pay for that?
Well, the first thing, as you said, is we just can't understand not only our own history, but anybody's history, right? So, there is no United States, and it certainly doesn't proceed as it does in its own history without understanding the history of slavery and without understanding the histories of Black struggle against slavery. So let me give you an example. And a lot of us know about the Louisiana Purchase.
Oh, yeah.
Jefferson's purchase of the Louisiana Territory from Napoleon, right? Which allows the United States to extend beyond the Appalachians out to the Mississippi River, right, in the 19th century. What I think not so many of us know is that the Haitian Revolution was the most important event to facilitating that purchase. Because in 1791, when enslaved people rose up in the colony of Saint-Domingue, which is the western third of the island of Hispaniola, right, what's now Haiti, they staged a revolution against slavery that lasted more than a dozen years and defeated an army sent out by Napoleon, led by his own brother-in-law. Now, Napoleon's plan to defeat the revolution was to then use Saint-Domingue as a base of operations and extend back into North America to extend the French Empire in North America once again. And when he lost the Haitian Revolution, he decided he couldn't proceed with that plan, and he sold the territory to Thomas Jefferson. There's an irony there, which is the victory of the Haitian rebels in the Revolution actually facilitated the expansion of the United States, which meant the expansion of the slave societies of the United States into the Mississippi River Valley. And that's how the United States ends up with a population of some 4 million enslaved people by the mid-19th century, making it probably the largest slave society in the history of the world. But again, you don't understand the history of the United States without understanding the history of slave rebellion.
Tell me more about the impact of those slave rebellions then.
Sure. I like to think, as you know, about the Caribbean and the importance of the Caribbean to the course of the American Revolution. So what happened is, look, the Caribbean was far more important to the British Empire, to European empires in generally, just in terms of their economic output, than even the North American colonies. But the North American colonies were far more populous. So, you had a British Empire in the Americas of about 2.7, 2.8 million people. 1 in every 3 of those people was enslaved. About 480,000 of those people were in the Caribbean. But the Caribbean was far more profitable, as I said. So, in Jamaica, which was the most profitable colony in the British Empire in the Americas around 1770, 1774, the average worth of a free white person was about 50 times the average worth of a free white person in Massachusetts, which was the least profitable colony in the British Empire, right? So you can already begin to see the imperial calculations about what's important and what the British are going to emphasize. They have 3 major naval bases in the Americas, 2 of them in the Caribbean, 1 of them in Nova Scotia, right? So you get a sense of you get a renewed sense of how the empire works when you understand the importance of those slave colonies in the Caribbean. If we just take North America, for example, the most profitable colony in North America is South Carolina, which had the highest percentage of enslaved people in its territory, even though you had more enslaved people in Virginia, which was the most populous colony. So already you're beginning to see the importance of slavery to this period. In 1778, when the French formally entered the war against Britain during the American, on the side of the Patriots, Britain reorients its military strategy toward the South, the most profitable territories on the North American continent, and toward the Caribbean. And a lot of the war is fought there.
Speaking of empire, a word you just used a moment ago, I want to come back to that because I want to connect this question to your piece that you wrote, which I read, called Slavery, Freedom, and the War for the British Caribbean. Slavery, Freedom, and the War for the British Caribbean. That's essentially what you're talking about right now. You mentioned Jamaica a moment ago as the most profitable during that particular era. You also mentioned Haiti. I wonder if I can just pivot for a second and have you draw a line from then until now with the plight and the condition of places like Jamaica and Haiti in the Caribbean. You take my question?
I think I do, and I'm going to answer it in this way.
Given that, just to be clear, I want to make sure that you get it and the audience gets it. We just heard Professor Brown say a moment ago that during that era, Jamaica was the most profitable. I'm asking him to draw a line between those slave rebellions then and the profitability that they were experiencing then with the economic plight of Jamaica and Haiti in real time. That's my question.
Yeah, I'm going to answer it this way. I mean, I use the word profitable rather than wealthy or rich for a reason.
Fair enough.
Which is these colonies were populated by mostly enslaved people. 90% of the Jamaican population was enslaved in the era of the American Revolution, and about the same percentage of people in what became Haiti were enslaved. The money that was made from the production of export crops like sugar and coffee, that accumulated in the very tight fists of the colony's leading planters and merchants. So this was merchant capitalism. And as we know, right, capitalists always want to exploit labor to the extent possible to wring as much profit out of other people's labor as they can. When they cannot and they move on, they leave those places destitute. So the Jamaican planters did not invest in infrastructure in Jamaica. They did not, for the most part, build schools. They did not, for the most part, even build churches. What they wanted to do was wring as much value out of the labor of those enslaved people as they could, oftentimes working them to death and then buying new people through the transatlantic slave trade. Sugar was so profitable in the 18th century that planters pretty quickly figured out that they could make their money back in just several years. And they didn't need to invest in housing, food, give time for people to raise children and families to reproduce. Instead, they worked people to death and they just replaced them when they fell. Right? That's the kind of society you're talking about here. It was working very well for the people who wanted to wring the profit out of those laborers, but it was an absolute catastrophe for the Black people who were working there. Now, that catastrophe continued. Those investments did not go into nurturing the health of the population, to building intergenerational wealth, to providing education and health and infrastructure. And we see the consequences of that kind of rapacious exploitation being replaced by neglect. So when those societies were largely abandoned by imperial capital, those societies fell into disrepair and people struggled on as best they could. And they're still struggling today.
Yeah. How have we done? No naivete here. How have we done in truthfully, in earnestly and honestly assessing the blame for the plight, the economic plight that these nations are suffering under even today?
I think we've done extremely poorly, in part because we think of them as being completely independent of us historically.
Right.
We don't think about this long history of connections that connects the United States to the Caribbean, connects France to Haiti, connects France to its other colonies like French Guiana, and that's a problem, because then we think that all of their disabilities are somehow owing to their own deficiencies. If we don't see the relationship, the long historical relationship of how the poverty of these places has been produced,
that's right,
in relationship to the wealth of the people who extracted it, then we think it's their own fault. Then the blame falls upon them for not getting their act together, for not pulling themselves up by their bootstraps. And it's really an act of disavowal that sees our country as being, totally disconnected from theirs. And I think this connects up with one of your earlier questions, and it's my larger problem with separating the history of the Black freedom struggle in the United States with the history of immigration, is that it kind of leads to almost a blood and soil understanding of belonging.
Yeah.
That, if you're not kind of born in a place in a nation state, you don't have a claim upon it, you don't belong there, which neglects all the ways in which, Black immigration from Africa and the Caribbean has informed the Black freedom struggle. You can't really understand the Black freedom struggle without understanding Marcus Garvey, who's a Jamaican immigrant, right? At the same time, it encourages us to see, the United States as being distinct from the world, as opposed to emerging out of the rest of the world and having a continuing relationship with these other places.
Yeah. That phrase just jumped out at me, an act of disavowal. An act of disavowal, and my mind started racing pretty quickly about this laundry list, this litany of things vis-a-vis the American empire that we could put under that category of an act of disavowal. I digress on that for now, but I think you take my point. When we come forward, Professor Brown, I want to circle back to a point he made earlier in this conversation, let him stretch out on this notion of how we have done holding America accountable to those revolutionary ideals that he mentioned earlier. As we all know, when these founding documents were written, we were not even considered, frankly. These were pro-slavery documents at their writing. But how have we done since then in making America to account to and for, to honor those revolutionary ideals? We're talking about the American Revolution and how life was for black people before, during, and certainly after this country's break from the Brits. More with Professor Vincent Brown of Harvard when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
Helping to stretch your moral and political imagination. This is Tavis Smiley.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. President Trump says he thinks an end to the Russian-Ukraine war is getting closer. Speaking from the White House, Trump said he spoke with a number of European leaders recently who want the war to end as fast as possible.
Should have never happened, should have never started. That war should have never ever started, but it did, and we're trying to get it solved.
The president said they're working to get Russia and Ukraine on the same page. Authorities in Rhode Island continue their search for the suspect responsible for a deadly shooting at Brown University. 2 students were killed and 9 others were wounded during the attack Saturday. Governor Daniel McKee said he is hopeful an arrest will be made soon. And Detroit Mayor-elect Mary Sheffield has selected her chief of staff, Brian White, to be the city's deputy mayor. Sheffield and White have worked together for over a decade. Get BIN News now on demand 24/7 on the iHeartRadio app.
Compassion sponsorship means food, healthcare, education, and most of all, being known, loved, and protected. There are thousands of kids waiting over a year. End their wait. Sponsor a child with compassion today. Text the word radio to 83393.
This is the KBLA Sports Minute with Ray Richardson.
A troubling season for the Clippers continues to generate more misery. They lost to Memphis last night, 121-103. 4 straight loss for the Clippers, who now have lost 8 straight at home. The Clippers haven't won a home game since October 31st against New Orleans. The loss to Memphis drops the Clippers to 6-20. If it wasn't for a 5-22 New Orleans, the Clippers would be at the bottom of the Western Conference. The Lakers are off until Thursday night in Utah at 18-7. The Lakers have the 3rd best record in the West. Luka Doncic still leads the NBA in scoring with 34.7 points per game. The Rams will not have wide receiver Devontae Adams for Thursday night's showdown game at Seattle. Adams suffered a strained hamstring in Sunday's win over Detroit. The Rams are considering resting Adams for the final 3 regular season games to make sure he's healthy for the playoffs. No debates, no speculation, just the info you need. That's your KBLA Sports Minute. I'm Ray Richardson. More news, opinions, and conversation when we come forward on KBLA Talk 1580.
We've got a lot to talk about.
I'm Reverend Gerald, the life coach. Is someone you love struggling with addiction and mental illness? Is improving your family's health important? Want to leave a legacy that your family can grow? Are you ready to enhance your perception of life experiences? Then wake up weekends at 7 a.m. with Urban Family Focus and get the wisdom, opportunity, resources, and motivation to live your best life. Join the conversation on Urban Family Focus Saturday and Sunday at 7 a.m.
Unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got your black. This is KBLA Talk 1580. Talk radio. That's music to your ears. We're unapologetically progressive. KBLA Talk 1580.
Paid for by government.com. Did you know? The United States Mint has issued a new Morgan silver dollar coin in proof condition for the first time. Not only that, they are also minted in 99.9% pure silver for the first time ever in history. Coin experts are calling this an amazing opportunity for anyone that knows the enduring popularity of Morgans. But you must hurry. Only 400,000 of these legal tender silver dollars were issued. These first ever Morgan silver dollars are brand new with stunning mirror-like finish, minted by the iconic San Francisco Mint. Call now and you're guaranteed a new first ever 99.9% pure silver proof Morgan dollar. To learn more, call 1-800-973-9717. If you order now, you will receive a free coin collector bonus pack, a $25 value, free with every order. Call 1-800-973-9717 now to secure your new Morgan silver dollars before they are gone. That's 1-800-973-9717.
The holidays mean more travel, more shopping, more time online, and more personal info in more places that could expose you more to identity theft. But LifeLock monitors millions of data points per second. If your identity is stolen, our US-based restoration specialists will fix it, guaranteed, or your money back. Don't face drained accounts, fraudulent loans, or financial losses alone. Get more holiday fun and less holiday worry with LifeLock. Save up to 40% your first year with promo code NEWS. Visit lifelock.com. Terms apply.
The only thing between you and your best self is the start button. This Cyber Monday, explore the world with Nordic Track. From the peaks of Peru to the streets of Paris, every workout moves you somewhere new with iFit trainers leading the way. The equipment's amazing, smooth, quiet, and those screens make it all feel real. Ready to start your next workout adventure with the #1 treadmill brand in the U.S.? Shop NordicTrack.com for Cyber Monday savings. Nordic Track. Train anywhere, explore everywhere.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Harvard Professor of American History as well as African and African American Studies, Vincent Brown. We have been spending this hour talking about the American Revolution, that is, the American Revolution through the eyes of folk who look just like you and me. And it's been fascinating to learn a great deal more about how Professor Brown wants us to expand the frame, if you will, for how we consider the American Revolution and its impact all these years later and all those persons who were encompassed in it, not just in this country, but indeed in the Caribbean. So it's been a fascinating dialogue, and I'm grateful to him for breaking this down in the way that he is. But I want to circle back to something he said earlier. Speaking of the American Revolution, you laid out these revolutionary ideals that we know that are written in the founding papers of this country, the founding documents. Again, which did not really consider us at that time. These are all pro-slavery documents, essentially, and yet I'm wrestling with this notion of how you think we have done holding America accountable to the best of those ideals. Take it away.
Yeah. So the short answer is I don't think we've done very well, and to the extent that we do not live in a country right now where we all share that fundamental creed that all persons are created equal and endowed with certain inalienable rights, then we're not living up to that promise. Now, you go back to who wrote those words. Thomas Jefferson, a slaveholder, I think we could say a child rapist, but also a very important political philosopher. Those words weren't just his. Those words create an opportunity. They create a horizon for people who are already struggling for freedom in the Americas and have been for hundreds of years. And that just creates a new moment in which people can say, okay, if this is the premise, then it's got to apply to us as well. And that struggle doesn't end. That struggle is not something that's kind of one and done, right? Once you announce it, it's over and that's the country. That's a struggle that has to continue on, for the rest of our lives, our children's lives and our grandchildren's lives, and on and on and on. It's a horizon that we're always working toward, right? But I think it's the right one to go to.
The right one to go to at this point, why?
Well, fundamentally, because I believe that we can't have a thriving society unless we respect all its members. And unless they have opportunity, unless we guarantee them certain basic rights. And I would add, the right to health, the right to education, as well as the right to pursue their livelihoods. I just don't think we can have a thriving society. We're going to come apart. And I think we're already seeing that in the kind of, violence we have in society, the kind of arguments, the culture war arguments we have over, who belongs, who counts, who matters. Unless we come to an agreement that we all matter and we're going to try and create a society that realizes that, principle, I think we're going to be doomed
Yeah.
to continue on with some of these fights that don't lead anywhere.
There may be, we'll come back to those fights in a moment here. I do want to ask you what your study of the American Revolution says to you. Put another way, what are the takeaways from your study of the American Revolution vis-a-vis the cultural battles we find ourselves fighting today? Are there some takeaways from the American Revolution that might give us some insights, some advice, some guidance on how to navigate the cultural battles we find ourselves in today? Put a pin in that. We'll come back to that in just a second. Before I do that, though, to the point you were making just a moment ago, what does your study of the American Revolution first say to you about whether or not multiracial democracy is truly possible? I hear your point. And in some ways, the point you've just made now is, for me at least, more aspirational than it is actual. So that's why I'm asking you this question point blank, whether or not anything with regard to your study about the American Revolution truly suggests to you that multiracial democracy in this country is possible.
Well, I mean, I'll come back at you, Tavis, by saying it's desirable.
Okay, I received that part.
Whether or not it's possible, it's far more desirable than the alternatives,
right?
Which is ethno-nationalist racism.
Gotcha,
right?
gotcha.
So even if Thomas Jefferson, for example, envisioned a kind of a white society where white yeoman farmers were at the top of society and where black people were at the bottom, or maybe even expelled from it entirely.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Some of the things he wrote are fundamental to our pursuit of a multiracial democracy.
Mm-hmm.
I do think from the period from like maybe 1965 to the recent present, we had made progress toward that multiracial democracy. I think we're going backward now, but the fact that we're going backward doesn't mean that that's not still a worthy aspiration and a worthy goal.
Yeah. The other question I teed up is what the American Revolution and your study of it as a black man on behalf of black people suggests to you about how we ought to be navigating the cultural battles that we are fighting today. Does that make sense as a question?
It does. I'm going to start with the political battles.
Okay.
Something that stands out to me in my study of the Caribbean in the American Revolution, which is that, the Caribbean planters, let's take the Jamaicans,
right.
They didn't like the Stamp Act, taxation without representation,
mm-hmm.
and the expansion of imperial authority in the 1770s any more than people in Virginia and Massachusetts did. But they acquiesced to it because they were too deeply intertwined with the British elite,
mm-hmm.
the imperial elite. They were too wealthy and couldn't really sacrifice their wealth for the sake of rebellion, for the sake of their own liberty and freedom. Mm-hmm. In fact, they were exposed to British power despite their wealth in a way that those colonists in Massachusetts weren't quite as exposed, which is why I think that trouble really started in Massachusetts, not in Jamaica.
Mm.
The Jamaican planters were more conservative in part because they had more power in the imperial system. Now, what that signifies to me in terms of our present moment is that, the pursuit of multiracial democracy is going to have to come from the people and not from the elites and their institutions.
Yeah.
And we have already seen these big law firms, these big universities, these big businesses capitulating to the authoritarian push by the Trump administration,
sure.
while at the same time, common people have been getting out in the street for No Kings protests, right? That to me is very similar to what I see with the wealthiest elites in the early Americas in the 18th century acquiescing to the expansion of crown power,
yeah.
right? Capitulating to the crown when not all of the common people did.
Yeah. I want to ask when we come forward. Let me just tee it up right now. I'll let you unpack it when we again come forward in a second here. I'm trying to imagine what that looks like. I hear the No Kings reference, and I get it. It's a great illustration. We can all visualize that. But if multiracial democracy is to work in this country, and to your point, Professor Brown, if it is to work because it comes from the people and not from the elites. Help me imagine what that actually looks like. What does that look like? What is it? Imagine for me, if you will, how multiracial democracy becomes a real thing if it has to be brought to the fore, if it's got to be, curated by everyday people, as Sly Stone might say. What's that look like? That's the question for Vincent Brown when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
From California to the Carolinas, everybody's listening to Tavis. More when we come forward.
Find what you love what you find. A total wine and more. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low. It just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine & More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
1 year ago, flames tore through Altadena and Eaton Canyon, changing lives forever. From the ashes, can a beloved community rise stronger? Hi, I'm Dominique DePrima, host of First Things First, weekday mornings, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m., here on KBLA Talk 1580. And I'm inviting you to join us on Wednesday, January 7th, as we broadcast live from Perry's Joint on the 1-year anniversary of this horrific and devastating fire. We're remembering those we lost, celebrating the heroes and sheroes who answered the call, and honoring the resilience of neighbors who are determined to rebuild together.
I've been a strong black woman a long time, and I can't just break down now.
Hear the stories of survival, the voices of recovery, the spirit of community that the fire couldn't destroy, and yes, the angst of those who still do not know where they go from here.
Yeah, where am I gonna go?
At KBLA Talk 1580, we don't just cover the story, we're part of this community, and we've done our level best to hold those responsible for this fire accountable. And 1 year later, we're still standing together.
It is my hopes that black people will rebuild those homes.
So join us live at Perry's Joint, 2051 Lincoln Avenue in Pasadena, 6 a.m. to 9 a.m. on Wednesday, January 7th, as we commemorate the 1-year anniversary of the Altadena Eaton Canyon fire. Because some stories demand to be remembered.
This too shall pass.
KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580, connecting you with services and solutions. LA County's new Justice Care and Opportunities Department, or JCOD, is here to support justice-involved individuals and their families. The JCOD Support Center is now taking calls at 1-833-LACJCOD. That's 1-833-522-5263. Available 7 days a week from 6 a.m. to 11 p.m., the Support Center is your one-stop shop for re-entry issues and court support. They offer court reminders, connections to local services, transportation assistance for housing, court appearances, and childcare. The JCOD hotline provides personalized help to connect you with services that you need. And don't forget to check out justiceconnect.org for more information. Remember, it's free and available every day at 1-833-522-5263. This is a community call to action from KBLA Talk 1580.
Freedom is an endless meeting. So let's get back to it with Tavis Smiley.
Tavis Smiley and Harvard Professor Vincent Brown, Professor of American History, as well as African and African-American Studies. We've been talking in this hour about the American Revolution and all things related to it. So we were talking a moment ago about multiracial democracy, and your point, Professor Brown, is that if that is possible in this country, now I'm not sure that the jury isn't still out on that, but if it is possible, your point was that it's going to have to come from the people. It's got to be curated by us, not by the elites. Help me imagine what that actually looks like.
I think the first thing it has to look like is the expansion of the franchise again. One of the potent things about the American Revolution was the expansion of the franchise, beyond the hereditary elite, out to people who had made a certain amount of money, and then beyond that, out to free white people, and then ultimately even to Black people and women, the descendants of slaves. Now, I think the expansion of the franchise has to be attended with, the reduction in the concentration of wealth. Because one of the things that happens with the concentration of wealth is the concentration of political power. And so I think until we expand people's, access to, the means of livelihood, we can't expand their political power. What I think that means in practice is reducing the influence of money in politics. Now you hear that a lot, but I think we've been going in the wrong direction in the last period. We really need to make sure that these billionaires can't buy our elections, and make sure that we can get people out to vote and enhance the power of their vote. That to me is the first step.
Yeah. Let me ask you this. As a matter of fact, I'm looking at my clock here. Let me just pose this question in our remaining moments. I'll give you 4 or 5 minutes to just unpack it as you will. But you said something a moment ago that jumped out at me as I've been, of course, trying to follow you this entire conversation. And I heard you say white people a moment ago, and I heard you say women. And I want to just ask you point blank what the role of the good white people is. What is the role of white women in helping to establish multiracial democracy in this country, if it has a chance at surviving? What is the role of the good white people in advancing the notion of multiracial democracy? And what is the role of white women in advancing this notion of multiracial democracy? The white people question, I think you get. The white woman question, maybe you do get that as well, but I want to lay a little harder on it. I'm talking specifically about the way they have shown up in these recent elections. I'm talking about Donald Trump. I'm talking about Kamala Harris. So what is the role of our good white brothers and sisters if, in fact, multiracial democracy is to have a chance of survival in this country? I want to ask Professor Brown that question when we come forward on Tavis Smiley.
This is getting good.
Yeah, man.
Tavis Smiley continues when we come forward. KBLA Talk 1580. We've got a lot to talk about.
KBLA Talk 1580 is committed to self-care and community well-being. Walk Good LA was formed in June 2020, inspired by the Black Lives Matter movement and the beginning stages of the COVID-19 pandemic. What began as a few minutes of breath work and yoga meditation before protests against police brutality turned into a safe space for the community to heal in hard times. The immensely positive response from the community transformed the momentum into a movement. Today, Walk Good LA is a Black and Brown-led community wellness organization based in Los Angeles. They provide spaces for healing through community yoga classes, guided meditations, hikes, run clubs, and other activations throughout Los Angeles that attract hundreds of members weekly. With the help of Propel and Michael B. Jordan, they now have a yoga and wellness studio in Los Angeles called the Walk Good Yard. To join their mailing list and connect with healing spaces, please visit walkgoodla.org. That's walkgoodla.org. Or find them on Instagram at WalkGoodLA. This is a community call to action, a community call to healing from KBLA Talk 1580.
My ride smells just right, just right, just right, just right. Y'all gotta try that Febreze car. Just right, just right, just right. La 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 la. With up to 40 days of consistency, all over Febreze car clips right on your vent. You know my car's my happy place. Keep that smile on my face when it smells just right, just right, just right. Yeah, breathe happy Febreze. La 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 la.
If you're like me, 60 and retired, making ends meet, especially here at the supermarket and drugstore, is tough. I'm so blessed to have found benefitscheckup.org. It's a free and confidential website from the National Council on Aging that connected me to $1,200 a year in programs that help pay for food, medicine, utilities, and more. Maybe it can help you. benefitscheckup.org.
You know where you want to go in life, and City National Bank can help. City National knows the dedication it takes to build your vision for the future into a reality, and our team is here for you. We have a wide range of options to help, from personal savings accounts to interest-bearing money market savings accounts and more, all designed to help you get where you want to go. City National, here for every stage of the journey. Learn more at cnb.com. City National Bank is a subsidiary of Royal Bank of Canada, member FDIC.
Find what you love what you find. A Total Wine and More. There's so much waiting for you. Spirits and beer, thousands of wines. Guides in the know and prices so low, it just might blow your mind. You're gonna find what you love and love what you find.
With curbside pickup and delivery available, you'll always find what you love, only at Total Wine and More.
Drink responsibly, B21.
Sometimes he fails at fitting in, but we're okay with that. You're inside the Tavis Smiley Show.
You are indeed with Vincent Brown, Harvard Professor of American History, as well as African and African-American Studies, scholar on the American Revolution. I've been delighted to have had him on this program for this hour. With the 3 minutes I have left, I want to yield the balance of my time to him. He made the point more than once that you can't really do justice to any conversation about the American Revolution without talking about us, black folk. You can't do it justice without talking about even the immigrant. And certainly you can't talk about the American Revolution without the good white folk. And so I want to connect these dots, if I can, at the end of the conversation. I'll let him connect the dots. What is the role of our white brothers and sisters, broadly speaking, and white women in particular, given the way they've shown up in these last elections that have made some of this nonsense possible? What's their role in establishing true multiracial democracy in this country?
So I think as we celebrate the 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, one thing that should be on people's minds is, if you talk about it, be about it. If you do believe that this country was founded with great ideals, high ideals in mind, then we should be trying to make our country reflect those ideals. Now, I know when you speak specifically about our white brothers and sisters and the last couple of elections, you're noting, without saying it, that white voters are the only voters who give Donald Trump a majority of their votes. There was a lot of talk about how he had made gains with Latino voters, how he had made gains with black men. But the fact remains that, without white voters, Donald Trump loses in a landslide in each of the last 3 elections. There's no way he becomes the president. And Donald Trump is clearly not someone who advocates for multiracial democracy. I think he's pretty clearly an ethno-nationalist who thinks that, white people ought to dominate others. He reveals that when he talks about immigration, when he says we should be, letting in immigrants from, say, white South Africans or Norwegians or Danes, but disparages people from Somalia or Haiti. It's pretty clear what he's doing there. He doesn't believe in the founding ideals in the way that I do and the way that you do. And so for those people who support him, I would say, think very clearly about what kind of America you are espousing, right? Is it an America based in the ideals of the Declaration of Independence, or is it an America based in the practices of someone like a Thomas Jefferson?
The 250th anniversary of the American Revolution, known more popularly as America 250, is a multi-year commemoration which kicked off, of course, earlier this year and leading up to the Declaration of Independence bicentennial on July 4, 2026. And so we'll have a number of these conversations, I suspect, between now and the 4th of July about the American Revolution and what it means to you, what it means for us all these years later. Professor Vincent Brown, Professor of American History, as well as African and African-American Studies at Harvard. What an honor, sir, to have had access to your brilliant insights in this hour. I thank you for the time and wish you the best during the holiday season.
It's been an honor and a pleasure to talk to you, Tavis. Thanks for having me on.
Thank you so very much. More of Tavis Smiley when we come forward.
KBLA 1580 Santa Monica.
I'm Misty Jordan with BIN News Now. President Trump says he thinks an end to the Russian-Ukraine war is getting closer. Speaking from the White House, Trump said he spoke with a number of European leaders recently who want the war to end as fast as possible.
Should have never happened, should have never started. That war should have never ever started, but it did, and we're trying to get it